Er zijn maar weinig Mac-gebruikers die dit geluidje niet kennen. Maar weet je ook wie het gemaakt heeft? One More Thing spotte hem op en kreeg hem voor de camera.
From 90 until I left in 99, I pretty much wrote all of the audio software that was coming out of Apple. I was responsible for the sound manager and making it make sound, like the ability for it to make sound. And then I completely rewrote it, got a couple of patents for those designs, became a member of the QuickTime team, and just sort of owned audio.
Even though not a lot of people know this, but you're most famous for something that every Mac user hears pretty much every day, which is the startup chime.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you, why is it the way it sounds today?
Yeah. Well, the original sound, if you can remember, on the original Mac 128 was actually kind of a cool sound. Then when the Mac 2 came out, the color Mac with slots, and it was this big-ass machine, there was an Apple sound chip developed, and it had programmed what I thought was actually a horrible sound. If you're a musician, you know about an interval called the tritone. If you're a religious person, it's actually called the interval of the devil. Supposedly it was the sound that would, I don't know, commit you to hell, or it was only the sound that the devil would play, or I don't know. The church had actually forbidden it. Like, if you were singing Gregorian chant, it was the most horrible possible sound in the world. It was like the biggest offense that you could make in church was to sing this interval. So anyway, the Mac was built upon these intervals. A mathematician at Apple had decided to create a chord based upon tritones at perfect intervals. So it was absolutely the most inharmonic, dissonant sound you could make. Okay, so I got to get rid of that. I was thinking about, you know, you're going to hear the sound every time it crashes. So every time you crash, you're going to reboot and you're going to hear the sound. So it could become really annoying fast. And it would just be associated with this horrid thing. Like, oh my God, I lost all my data, you know, fucking Macintosh, you know, that kind of a thing. So I didn't want to be associated with that. I had to think of a zen, calm. I kind of thought of it as a palate cleanser, you know, to sort of be a refreshing sound. And I wanted to take advantage of the speaker, but I also knew that other speakers were shitty, so I had to design a sound that like fit a lot of different machine, different configurations, different sound environments, different speaker sizes, different frequency, you know, a lot of different things. Some had stereo, some had not stereo, a lot of different problems. So I was trying to think of a sound that I could design that would work in all these possible things. So it was actually a lot of work for, what, 2.5 seconds or whatever it is. So I just ended up fooling around and playing different chords, and, you know, it's a big fat C major chord with a lot of thick, rich sonic textures behind it. It was a stereo sound. It phased back and forth. There's a little bit of a stereo reverb, and there's a sharp transient, little chiffy sound that you would get like off of a flute or a pan flute, like a, you know, a bamboo flute. There's a little bit of that. There's a bunch of string sounds in it, and anyway, it had enough richness in it that it would sound recognizable no matter how you played it. So that was the design behind it, and then just snuck it in, and then and that's really where it all came from.
Well, you must feel some kind of pride whenever you, I mean, we're here at a coffee shop and like half of the computers here are Macs. When somebody starts his or her computer, you're just like, oh, that's my sound. I mean, does that still fill you with pride, or is?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's recognizable to everybody, but it's like way more recognizable to me. I mean, it's like a very familiar sound. I mean, yeah, it's like a sound like, I mean, I can hear it in my head. You know,
you must have heard it like a million times.
Oh, yeah, at least. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's hard to describe. Like, it's so familiar to me. I mean, it's like looking at yourself in the mirror. Mm-hmm. You know, like.
Right. And now I still want to continue a little bit about, you know, the recognition from the sound that you made. It even appeared in motion pictures now in the WALL-E movie.
Right. WALL-E used it. For them to use it is interesting for a few reasons. Like, one, it's a recognizable sound. But it also has now, it's taking on a, I almost said iconic, but the word really is an earconic meaning, where it's a sound that actually has a meaning to it. You know, it's not just some sound. And so it's the startup sound of a Macintosh. But in the Wall-E movie, it's the startup sound after he's been, you know, recharged. So it's one of those, it's a really, it is actually touching, huh? It is kind of touching.
Yeah.
That was, I think, was the coolest one. If you go on Amazon, I found this review of the Wall-E movie that I thought was really cool. It got me kind of choked up right there. There was a review of when the movie had premiered at the theater, and that sound had made, you know, the Wall-E chime occurs. The audience applauded. Like, it was cool to hear that, you know, like, wow, kind of like a, I don't know, rock star kind of moment.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like the world should know that I did that? I mean, let's just say, is this your biggest accomplishment? Might be a hard question, but
It's kind of right. I don't know. That's an interesting question, man. Like, if I go down the history on my tombstone, is it going to say the creator of the Mac startup sound?
yeah.
I mean, in a sense, it would be interesting, like satisfying, gratifying. I'd be flattered, but at the same time, I also hope there's something more, more than just, you know, I made that sound.
Did you create all of the sounds that you can still hear at, you know, the warning sounds that are still on the Mac, or?
Well, there's I guess it was about the same time, actually. There was a couple that I did on my own, back to my studio, and I started composing some more sounds. One of them was this sound that was like chimes, and it was really a xylophone sort of a sound, like, and so I called it chimes, I think it was. And then and I added it to System 7 basically late at night. Once again, had to sneak it in without asking permission. Changed out all the old sounds, added the new sounds, and one of them was called Chimes. And so in one of the beta internal builds of the operating system, the lawyers at the time were always reviewing the builds, because at the same time the Beatles were suing us. So at the same time, I had all these lawyers asking me all these questions, taking memos and internal documents and papers and all of this kind of nonsense. And it was just becoming so frustrating. And they got really paranoid about anything that hinted at something being musical or Apple doing anything musical.
Just in between, how hard is it to be a person like you working at a company that's not allowed to do anything with music, basically? I mean,
exactly.
Isn't that
Exactly.
continuous frustration?
No, that's exactly the point. That's exactly what's going on. Like, everything I was talking about, like how I got started, how I got on the computer, was all based upon music. I was studying to be a composer. Like, it's all, to me, it's all about music. Like, what are we supposed to be doing with these things? I mean, you know. So yeah, they're bugging us about becoming, because I mean it goes way back to the actual Apple name was able to be used because we had promised, not we, but you know, Steve Jobs had promised not to do anything musical. And so, you know, there was a couple of lawsuits and a couple of payments made to the Beatles Corporation to avoid all of these problems. So then I make the sound and I called it Chime. So the internal lawyers at Apple freaked out. They thought the word chime was something too musical. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, come on. And I was like, I gotta come up with a new name for this. And I said, I know. Just off the top of my head, I said, I know, and I'll call it Let It Beep. Because it seemed to summarize everything, but I'm like, there's no way, like, if they're gonna sue me over the word chime, there's no way they're gonna let me use that name. So as soon as I said that, they said, no way, you can't do that. And I'm like, I was kidding. But like, as they're arguing that I can't actually use the name Let It Beep, I said, just off the top of my head, I said again, so sue me. And then as soon as I said it, I'm like, holy shit, that's the name. I just have to spell it funny so that no one realizes what I'm doing. So I was like, it kind of sounds like a Japanese word. Maybe if I spell it like it's a Japanese word, that it'll get past the lawyers. And so I told I can't remember if her title was director or whatever, but the most important person in the room, I said, would you write the email to the lawyers letting them know that we changed the word from chime to this Japanese word, and it doesn't mean anything musical. And I said, but don't say it to them, just spell it. Send it as an email, just spell it, because if you say it, they might get it. So I don't know. In the back of my mind, I think they actually did get it, but I think that they were willing to let it go.
They still had that little thread of sense of humor in them.
Lawyers, it's got to be a very little thread. Crazy. So if the startup sound or the Sosumi, like, I'm more tickled by the Sosumi thing, but I'm probably more proud of the startup sound. Yeah.